It is now. All right, it looks like we are live. Twitch is just catching up, but that's okay. So, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Q&A and Critique number 46 here in Arendelle.xyz's Discord server and the Q&A and Critique channel. So here we're here every week, connecting on Thursday around 1800 UTC to talk about art, questions, comments, tech, techniques, pipelines, answers, and any type of subject that arises every week. So today we have two special guests. One of them has Shadesnoop, has presented here before, but he has a new piece. It is slightly not safe for work, but if you're okay with that, we're going to explore that topic later on in the second half of today. And in the first half, we have Imkindadrunk, who has been working diligently, and despite difficulties with the internet, he's managed to create a nice piece for today, which we're going to take a look at as well. So, Imkindadrunk, how are you?
I'm okay. I'm fine.
Excellent.
Just excited and nervous.
All right. Well, I'm excited to see your piece. So first things first, we're going to take a look at your piece. And you sent a couple of videos earlier, and we have this architectural piece here. And we're going to take a look at a closer look. So I wanted to ask you first and foremost, what is your inspiration? What is the piece? Could you give us a quick introduction?
I realized actually the inspiration was only the honeycomb, because I saw an image of that and I wanted to reproduce. And this project I wanted to use continuous work because I realized that I was working only in sprints, and I tried to make this like a marathon. I usually work only once a week, so I realized it was a good opportunity for get my hands on the real. Oh my god, I'm nervous. Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, I understand.
So it was like for a continuous work, and my first attempt at using pre-made materials. And the third thing is not keep everything as non-destructive as possible, using booleans and any other destructive technique.
I quite like this piece. Let's take a closer look. Hey, I see a little...
Full of Easter eggs. This honeycomb actually has a storytelling behind it. I wanted to homage the Blender community, and one friend of mine that once stopped his vacation just to send me a file. I don't know if you ever heard him, Under Stephens.
Oh, really? Who is this guy?
And my own work.
And your own work. It reminds me of The Little Prince.
And the other image, the plane on. Sorry.
Is this based on The Little Prince?
Yes. And the other one is like a Brazilian ship made by Santos Dumont, which a friend of mine made an incredible render of it. Okay. I asked him to include it, and he let me.
Oh, nice. So are all of them...
And the other piece are my own artwork.
Sorry, let me just turn it down a little.
Sorry?
Sorry, could you please continue?
These other paintings work.
Yeah, we have someone with an open mic at the moment who's talking in the background here. Sudikov, I'm going to have to turn you down just a little bit, and then we'll continue. So, Imkindadrunk. So this is the render from your friend over here with the plane, which is a really nice one. And you have other pieces as well here.
These are my own paintings.
These are your own, nice. How did you make the circle here?
On Krita.
Oh, nice.
It actually was by hand.
Beautiful. All right, guys. Well, if you like this piece, throw in something into the chat. I'll try to pay attention, and we can see if you guys like it. What do you guys think?
Yeah, great work. I like the depth of field through the window. Really kind of, obviously gives it that depth. That gives it a feeling of realism.
That is true. I've noticed the nice camera work even on the rug as well. Like you can see that it's focused right into the center of the world with the ground and the wooden slats on the floor, so that it brings in the center of the space. Concerning the lenticular design, is quite cozy. I like the detail that you add, like the realistic Wi-Fi router there. That was quite clever. And is this room modeled after a room where you live, or is this completely designed from scratch?
It's designed from scratch.
Very nice. I love the little homage. Thank you for including me there. That's really nice.
No, it's the least I could do, man. You always help me, and not only me. You are a great helper in the community. You're always engaged, and you help me. I don't want to be a teacher's pet, but
No, man.
you're really cool.
This is what it's about, really. This is why we're all artists and we all here in a similar world. And I mean, it's the least I can do as well is just share what I know. I love the quality of the render too with the bounce light and things. So I have a question for you, a technical one. How did you do the carpet? I noticed there were like little bits of cloth or fur on the carpet, and it looks like cloth. What's the secret? How did you get such an amazing carpet?
It's actually a plane and displacement, and I used a normal map for the displacement of the bumpiness of the rug, and a 4K texture.
Oh wow, so you're using micro displacement here with cycles?
I'm not sure if the normal displacement. I'm not sure if it was the micro displacement.
Oh, so
Just
like the
subdivided the plane
modifier.
a couple of. Oh yes.
Wow. And how dense is the geometry on the rug? Does it have to be quite high?
Not too dense. Too dense. Let me check. I believe I used the subdivision modifier as modifier. I didn't apply it. I remember.
Oh, nice. All right, so I downloaded, I think you sent me a couple of other files. There's a work in progress video that we have here. Is it okay to show it?
Oh, of course. Both of them are great. Okay.
All right, so it's called a whip anim. Let me just see if I downloaded it correctly. Here it is. I'm loading it up. So we can see the process. This is special. We don't often get to see the work in progress. So notice you did a number of iterations with the character walking around. Did you model the Little Prince a while ago? I've noticed this has been your profile picture for quite some time.
Yes.
So what was your inspiration to use him as your profile, as your mascot almost?
It's because he's kind of like me. He's lonely and he's wandering around and
On the roof, behind the couch.
trying to find his own place in the world and get.
That's quite a meaningful character. Now I understand. I also noticed in the work in progress with your background, you had two options. You had one with kind of like a sunrise or a sunset with some clouds, and then there was an option of using the actual street lights. What made you decide to use the street lights?
Because I was planning to do a night scene, but the HDRI that I had was a daylight, and even though I let it at a low value, it was still kind of fake. Then I just went with another HDRI, Then it was too vertical, so I had to rotate it a little because it was like it looked fake because real life are not really aligned.
That's true. I liked it how you moved it to the side as well to kind of break that vertical language that you mentioned in the work in progress earlier this week. I think that was a good choice.
Mhm.
Also, your choice of floorboards is quite nice. This is an excellent piece. So, concerning the textures on the ground, how did you make the wood tiles?
Uh, it was all pre-made materials. The goals of the project was to use pre-made materials because I mostly work making my own materials, and in the real world, it's not a viable option. I mean, for everything.
That's true.
So I didn't want to use pre-made models, but I try to use the pre-made textures.
All right. Oh, Shadesnoop has a comment in the chat. He says he really likes it. He's asking, is the actual geometry that we see outside the window, or is it an HDRI background in the window
What?
here? The street lights on the outside.
Oh, these are the HDRI.
Okay. And Cantaran says he likes the lighting, but he's had some electronics background and he disapproves of the outlet down here in the bottom right. How long did it take to do the render, he asks. Or she.
Wow. Since I've got problems, I use two different GPUs. I was using the 1050 Ti on McDonald's because I wouldn't bring an eGPU. That's my one of the cool things too. I use an external GPU on a computer to
Wow, that's kind of
do
cool.
the heavy rendering. And since I had power outage outside, so I had to work on most of it was done on the 1050, and then the heavy rendering took about 1 hour on the 2060 RTX, the animation. But the render was like a couple of seconds, like a couple of minutes, sorry, like 2 or 3 minutes, I guess. Because I'm not using a high level of samples, I'm using only 265 samples.
Yeah, that's reasonable. And did you denoise the image later, or?
Yes, use the compositor and the nosy node.
Okay. I have one last question. What is this brown thing on the couch?
It's supposed to be a cup holder, like when you were drinking a beverage or something and you need to rest, you rest your cup. It was a, a wooden board just to place like a coffee or something.
Okay. All right. Second, well, I was actually probably joking here. This is my second. That was my second to last question. My last and final question is, this is more about the subject of doing a review. So I wanted to ask you, would you like feedback on this image?
Of course.
All right. So this is my next question. Segue. What is the central hero or the message of your image? What are you trying to communicate?
Cozy environment.
Cozy environment.
Like somebody who just got home from work and he's like, oh, okay, I want to be in a comfortable place. Maybe watch some TV. Like somebody coming back from work.
All right, that's a good message. So let's take a look at this context now that we have your goal. So the goal here is somewhere cozy, coming home from work to unwind, maybe watch some TV and relax. That's a good goal. All right, so now that we understand the goal, we can play around with this and we can take a look. So my initial story that I understood from your image, which I think was, it's close, but mine was like, I feel an open space. This is subjective, it's a very personal interpretation, but I felt an open space. I think the hero is the window. I feel like there's a breeze. There's a breeze with this curtain. It's kind of like it's not 100% hanging like the one on the left. It's like there's a slight breeze pushing through the curtain. Did you do this intentionally?
Yes, I used the class simulation, and I like it because here my curtains are almost never still because of the wind. And since the other one was close to the wall, I figured that if a wind blows, it'll be on the right one, not on the left.
That's right. You did it well. It's completely believable. There was a slight breeze. It must be a warm night or a warm, temperate night. The window is open, which means he's like getting some fresh air. It's like a refreshing moment, which is pretty good. I
Sorry,
like
it
it.
could.
As it feels like there's a refreshing moment in the hallway, and the way you're using your
Mhm.
perspective and your shot is almost symmetrical, and right in the dead center. So I'm obviously going to look into the
Mhm.
window and noticing everything around this window. You've lit the window. The window is basically the hero of the story. Like you're allowing fresh wind to fill in the empty space, which I find quite nice. So concerning your story, I think my interpretation is a little bit different, but your goal, you've managed to express that, and I think that's really good. I think that's a good job. Plebes is writing.
Thank you.
What about you guys? What do you guys think of the story? What kind of message did you get out of this image? Would you have any recommendations of how to improve his goal? If you want, you can just open up the microphone, let me know, or you can write in the chat and I'll read it out. Plebe says he likes the composition a lot. It is very symmetrical, but it's not too symmetrical. Maybe you could add something like a shrinking board, or skirting board, sorry. Is it called that? It's the board that's on the bottom of the wall, on the ground, to smooth the transition between the wall and the ground, which is actually true. Yeah, a lot of constructions has this board at the bottom here, or kickboard or skirting board, which protects the wall from people's shoes or the broom. So that's a minor detail concerning architecture. But he does have a very strong point. Do you remember were you here during one of the Q&As where we talked about architecture and using contrast of light and dark to create different spaces?
I think I missed that one.
Oh,
I think I missed one.
okay, well, let's take a look here. So you have an intention and a goal, which is good. But sometimes we can use different colors or light and dark colors. So you used one constant color, the gray neutral color, to kind of create the neutral feeling of the space. So if your intention is to make something feel a lot more cozy, this is where we can start creating something, a different vibe of the area using color intention. So for example, here I have let me just see why my tablet's not working. Oops. There we go. Now it's working. Cool. Thanks. Just took a while. So as you can see, when you have a space that you create around the world, you use like a neutral light color to create a larger space. But there's options that you can use to create a shorter space, a deeper space, a wider space, a longer space, or even a compact space. So in this case, for example, if you want to make people feel very cozy, what you could do is you could, if you really wanted to, you could make the roof darker. If you made the roof darker and the walls lighter, like this, let me just make sure this is an overlay. Maybe overlay is not the correct one that I want to use. I'm going to use soft light. Screen. There we go. Drop it down. Let's just do normal for now. Keep it like this. So if I made this side areas a little bit lighter and the ones up here a little bit darker, this would change the ability, this would like create a sense that the world is wider. So for example, the lighter walls, the whiter walls would create something different. So I probably need to make a new layer with lighten just to give a better lighten. And this one I will make it, I'll erase this. Right, so the wall, the top is darker, right? And if we use this one, we can use a lighter color, just a little bit, to kind of make the space of the world feel like it is wider and more compact at the roof. Why is my color depth so terrible? Give me a second. Image, convert image color space. I'm using ACES 8-bit RGBA. Let's go 16-bit. There we go, that smoothed out the gradients a little bit. So that's one way you can do it. Or you can do another concept of, for example, if you want to make the room feel smaller but taller, you can make the roof feel lighter. So for example, if we use, in this case, I'm going to use the lighten again. And I'm going to bring out the roof. I'm going to make it almost a lot lighter within the darkness. And then I can use the walls, and I can darken the walls. We're using darken one. I'm going to use this shape. And I can bring out the walls, and I can darken these walls a little bit. Maybe with the lighting, the way I'm controlling things. So if I darken the walls just a bit, and I lighten the roof a little bit, in this case, I can create a sense of feeling that the room is taller than it really is. You can see, without it, it feels like it's a lot shorter. With it, even though it's the same height, it can start to feel a lot taller. Maybe I can use addition instead. So these are different techniques, even subtle techniques, is you can change the space of your room by changing the contrast of your colors based on your intention. So you use the neutral dark color to kind of bring in the space. But another thing you can do is like, okay, well, what happens if you keep the room dark like this, but you decided to create the rest of the walls are nice and dark, but you decided to like you want to make the room feel longer. So in this case, you could lighten up the back wall with a different color like this. And let's just make this an overlay, for example. No, not overlay, sorry, lighten. So here we're using, you could lighten the back wall a little bit. And you could bring out the color of, bring out the wall, the back wall, by lightening it up and keeping the rest of the room nice and dark. So if the rest of the room is nice and dark here, with the back wall nice and light, you can make the room feel like it is longer. And you can always work with different things like this, working with different colors. You could use the colors to bring out your shape. So for example, if we like bring out a dark red, a dark wine red on the side wall. So if you want to make the room not feel as wide, you could use a dark red, for example, on the walls here, to bring out the sense that the room is darker or less wide than what you have illustrated using these dark colors. So I'm going to use a darken. And you can control using different, the way you paint your roof, the way you paint your walls. So in this case, the roof is dark, the back wall is light, the side walls are dark. So this brings your wide room more close. It makes it closer, and it makes it feel deeper, because the window is where we're going to, and you're making the back wall feel like it's further away, it's more open. But if you want the room to feel super large, you could, for example, lighten the roof, make the roof white, make all the walls white, and you can make the back wall dark, like a dark color or a dark contrast, to bring the room, open up the room, but bring it closer. So as you can see, darkness is, when you use a dark color for a wall or a roof, this means bring it closer to where the person feels. If you want the room to feel more open and wider in a direction, well, you'd use a light color. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. So you can play around. You have an excellent scene to do that. So now you can, like, for example, you could play around with your messages, you know, maybe there's a different time of day and you're feeling a little bit under pressure. In this case, you could paint the room really dark, change the lighting to something a little more aggressive, or the lights are turned off and it's cloudy and stormy outside, and the rooms are painted, and the roof is painted black, and the side walls are painted black, and this wall is painted dark blue. It would make even though the room is open and wide in space and the window is open and it's dark and stormy outside, you would feel compact and compressed. Or you could do the opposite. Maybe there's a little toy or there's a nice sunny weather outside, and there's a nice samosa or something on the table, and there's a nice sunlight coming in, and maybe you're stuck inside in the house and you want to go outside. So the hero's the window and you have a nice samosa on the table. Then you could use a nice bright yellow wall here with the bounced yellow light. And this wall up here could be kind of a dark color, and this wall's a dark color, this wall's a dark color, so that we're coming out from the dark into the light. And you stretch that feeling of going towards the window. And you can use these contrasts with the walls to help you tell different types of stories. In general, you're using the neutral gray everywhere to kind of give that neutral sense of open space. Was intentionally good, but now you can keep working it if you want to change different stories. You know, play around with things, play around with your different feelings, because you have an excellent scene, nice models, nice little details. And Plebes mentions he's worked some time in house painting. It's always nice to have colored walls with lighter ceilings for that tall feeling. That's right. Having a light roof makes you feel less compact, more free. You can stand tall. So well done, Kindadrunk. Thank you for sharing this piece and putting it out there. I think it's a really beautiful piece. I love the little details. Thank you for the homage as well to the community, the context of your character. And I think your exercise to finish your project instead of just doing small little ones and actually finishing a big project is good, because this is what 3D needs. 3D is always a long, slow, drawn out process, and sometimes it takes a bit of grinding through it to get to the end, doing the marathon, before you can make something great. So, good work, Kindadrunk.
Thank you, and thank you so much for the opportunity.
No worries. I hope to see more of you in the future. So, Shadesnoop, are you available to come up on mic?
Yes, sir.
All right. So you mentioned earlier today that you have a quick last-minute project for your school that was based on a poem that was provided by your instructor. And
I mean, we had enough time to make it, but it was just me being lazy, and I did it at last minute.
Procrastination.
Yes.
All right. And you chose the poem "The Cinnamon Peeler"
Yes.
by Michael Ondach.
Yes.
So, would you like? Could I read the poem just to get an idea?
Yes, please.
All right. Okay, so the cinnamon peeler. If I were a cinnamon peeler, I would ride your bed and leave the yellow bark dust on your pillow. Your breasts and shoulders, okay, so this is the not safe for work part, would reek. You could never walk through the markets without the profession of my fingers floating over you. The blind would stumble certain of whom they approached, though you might bathe under rain gutters monsoon. Hair on the upper thigh at the smooth pasture, neighbor to your hair or the crease that cuts your back this ankle. You will be known amongst strangers as the cinnamon peeler's wife. I could hardly glance at you before marriage, never touch you. Your keen-nosed mother, your rough brothers, I buried my hands in saffron, disguised them over smoking tar, helped the honey gatherers. When we swam once, I touched you in water, and our bodies remained free. You could hold me and be blind of smell. You climbed the bank and said, this is how you touch other women. The grass cutter's wife, the lime burner's daughter, and you searched your arms for the missing perfume. And knew. What good is it to be the lime burner's daughter, left with no trace, as if not spoken to in the act of love, as if wounded without the pleasure of a scar? You touched your belly to my hands in the dry air and said, I am the cinnamon peeler's wife. Smell me. Curious. So Shadesnoop, what inspired? Why did you pick this poem? And let's take a look at the image.
So, I'll be honest, the other poems, so basically in the limited time that I had, so the other poems were very abstract, and even this one I'm not very proud of this because I just literally took, I just took the painting, like the poem on just like, I guess the face value, there isn't much, I guess would say symbolism or deeper meaning, so, and this one, I thought that I could make it in like a couple of hours. And also with we had to like do a writing piece with it, and like it was like 500, right, 500 to 800 words over why you made the decision you made while you were painting this. And I'm not very good at writing, so I asked my brother to do the writing part for me. And even he said this might be a good render, but it doesn't really accomplish what the instructor asked you to do. So he actually then ended up making a few modifications to the image. I'll share that in the channel.
Very nice, though. So here's the modified image.
Yeah, even the original in the one that I've submitted, there's if you zoom in a little bit on the cinema, there's you can see a few grass blades. That was also my brother's addition. They are not in 3D. He just took a like a 2D image of a grass blade and just erased it so it looks like it's in 3D, but it's just a 2D image.
All right.
So he tried to add a few elements of the poem. So you can see he added a little scar on her thigh and a slight handprint on her stomach, and there's and the poem it talks about a yellow bark dust. So he on the right he added like a little dust. And also the way he starts the poem, he says, if I were a cinnamon peeler. So it's all in his imagination. We're not in reality. So my brother decided to, like, he sliced the image so it breaks the shadows. So to know that we are in an imagination where we're not we're not in reality, to kind of show that.
Yeah, it's an interesting metaphor. but I understand what your brother's intention was. Though I have to say, just my initial impression of the image is that as your last piece that we had a look at a couple of weeks ago, your shadow play with the light is a lot. Your game is on. Like, it's a very good technique that you're using, and it's quite nice how you're compiling your shapes and the shots. Like, the shape language that you have with your light and your contrast has improved by a lot compared to the last architectural pieces that we had a look maybe a month or two
Yeah,
ago.
I mean, there's a little bit of so the before I made this artwork, I did some research on the writer, and so I think he was this was when the time when he was in, I think, Sri Lanka, and in Sri Lanka the buildings, like the smaller houses, the type of they have these metal rods in the windows, so that's so just assuming that they're in a house, and there's some light creeping through the window. So this in Sri Lanka, this is like the type of shadows that you would get.
That is a nice detail. It says similar here in Colombia where I'm at. Every house has metal bars on the windows. Some of them are decorative, some of them are practical, but yeah, the light comes in with shadows as well. It's mostly a security thing, correct?
Yes, yes.
Without the pleasure
But
of
yeah,
it.
if I had more time, I would have tried to make it a little more like, I don't know how to say it, but like this I feel is like very literal, like one to one. What you read in a poem is just translated into the image. There's like not much of a deeper meaning, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. Because it's a tricky one, like, the metaphor in the story is a hard message to express because it's a lot about action. It's about what he would do. And so the way you're trying to express it is what he sees as motivation or the consequence of his actions with the wife. And so it's a tricky one to express. I understand, but so I understand what your brother's intention was and also your intention. I find your image, other than the fill light, is a lot more minimal and a lot more, with that, a little bit easier to read. When you start adding the other elements, for example, the sky, yeah, that could be okay, but breaking up the shadows, adding in the fingerprints and the light here on the right kind of distracts from the main subject.
Yeah. Even, that's what I said to my brother. I said, if you want to modify the image, you can for the assignment purposes, but for my personal like collection, I'll just still use the original one because I think I like that one more.
Yeah.
But I mean, also, but if you're, because then you're trying to add like 2D elements on a 3D image, I don't really, I mean, sometimes it works, but in this case, and I think it's more distracting than adding to the image.
That is true, especially the broken shadows.
Yes.
Yeah, though, in my personal opinion, like, for example, since we're looking at like the consequence of the story, I think you could use the elements of, in this case, saffron or smoking tar, honey gatherers, or he's talking a lot about the smell, the smooth of the upper thigh. He's talking about the rain gutters of the monsoon. He's talking about floating. He's talking about yellow bark dust. He's talking about the saffron, the smoking. He's talking about the concept of water and the lime burner's daughter. When you burn lime, it creates a lot of. Here's a perfume that he mentions. There's a lot of concepts of aromas, smells, And to do that, you could use, for example, your brother does have a point with this like patch of dust in the light coming out. In this case, for example, this carpet that we have on the ground here, and this blanket that you have here, you could use the background as part of the story. You've got the story of the shadows, this is correct, but in this case, the concept of cinnamon, which is a powdered dust as well, once it's been processed, the smells of the aroma, the smoke, the saffron, all of that, the smoke tar. You could create a sense of an aroma not just from the cinnamon here in the center of the world, but in the background textures with a bit of honey, the damp water. So you could work the symbolism, but in this case, instead of like being on the actual hero, you could use it as part of the background.
That's a background, yeah.
And instead of fighting for attention, like this light here, you could have it as part of the complement of your hero, so that the contrast of the story elements don't fight. Instead, they complement the hero, which is she. She is the hero of the story. He is infatuated with what she is, and he would want to do a lot of things. He would want to be the cinnamon. He is the cinnamon peeler, and she is the wife.
Yes.
Give me 1 second. All right, I'm back. Well, that would be my little advice. I mean, hopefully it's probably... But you've already delivered this project, correct?
Yes. Now we wait for the grade.
I hope you get a good one. I think it's
If
really...
if you guys want to make win predictions,
Let's play some bets.
I'll reveal it next week. Yeah.
All right, so let's open up the microphone or the chat. What do you guys think? What do you think of this piece? What's the first story that comes into mind? We have the clear story, the clear intention. Do you think he's close to it? Has he expressed the message? If you have an opinion, feel free to open up the microphone, or you can write in the chat.
It reminds me of that scene on American Beauty.
Oh yeah. Omar.
Sorry, I'm not aware of it.
Okay, so the American.
Is it like a movie?
This is a movie.
Yes.
A classical movie. American Beauty poster. And there's a guy, he has an imaginative, he's imagining different fantasies, right?
Oh.
So but eventually he kind of, things get out of hand because he's kind of living a pretty rough life. And eventually his imagination is his downfall and things go crazy. Based with, the conflicts of interest of other people. So it's got Kevin Spacey in it, who's a bit of unfortunately, he's kind of got a bad reputation at the moment. But the concept of the imagination and the obsession and the freedom of what's happening is portrayed by this fantasy of this particular image. It's very similar. So you're quite right there. Omar says you'll get a grade A. I agree as well. It's a good effort.
I mean, also I was I was thinking to do maybe like a smoke simulation, like I mean not a simulation, but try adding volumetrics in the scene or adding dust. But the thing is, every time I use this model, this is very high poly model, and my laptop just can't handle it. So that's something I always struggle with. That's like the vertex count goes up, the more I guess the artistic choices that I can make goes very down, because every time I make a new change, I have to wait like 10-20 minutes just for the thing to update and see how it looks.
Oh yeah.
So
I
I end
understand.
up blocking myself.
The volumetric is an excellent idea. I mean, I would do the same.
Yeah, I was thinking.
like a strain of smoke just trailing across the image or crossing across the
Yeah,
shadows.
exactly. Yeah, that's what I was imagining, but just the performance was too slow for it.
Yeah, in this case, you would have to use the compositor or even use something like smoke on black background image. And you can use a compositor and throw it on, or use a plane, or even render it in a different
Oh
pass.
yes.
So you could use something like this, just floating over her body delicately, as like an incense coming out. And you can composite this in using an overlay or some kind, or screen. In this case, screen
So I
would
mean,
work.
in your opinion, if let's say for a future render, does adding like 2D smoke cards in the 3D scene work better, or just doing it in the compositor works better? Because I've seen both, and I don't know
If you want
which one is
shadows
like the better.
from the cards, then
Yeah.
you can do it in a 3D space. If you don't need the shadows, then you can do it in the compositor. So, but using cards for volumetrics is one of the oldest tricks in the books with visual effects, and it works. And you can do it very well without too much problem. So for example, if I have like this ground here, and I load up that, let's just download that image. We can use the same scene as the remote. And you can even use Eevee, like if you're having difficulty with cycles to do the rendering, you can switch over to Eevee and render out that volumetrics as a pass, for example. So
Oh yes.
if we install that image, or import image as planes, we go inside that remote control, get the correct image, this one. I'm going to make it straight alpha, auto refresh, principled, import image as a plane. And I'm going to do some modifications. And let's switch over to the rendered view. Oops. Rendered view. I'm going to hide most of the lights, hide on a sunlight, turn on my world scene view. There we go. So here we have the smoke, right? So if you want this smoke floating on like some geometry, so let's grab like the sphere, and you want the smoke to cast a shadow on the sphere like this. So you just go into your shading, and you can use hashed shadows, and you can use the exact values of the alpha color into the alpha here, and you go into your Eevee settings in case your cycles is going to take too long to render, and you just use this as another pass. So a couple weeks back I talked about using scenes with different render settings in your compositor, so that you could render the same scene in Eevee, for example, with a certain setting. And you can use cycles for the other things. So you can render the volumetrics in Eevee, and you can render the general scene in cycles, for example. And then you can use another composite scene to put it back together. So I talked about this a little while back. So here we have alpha blend, and we're going to make the shadow mode to alpha hashed. We go back to the render settings. You can see here that it's starting to create a shadow, but you can see that things are not 100% the way that you would like. So if you want to change the shadow settings of your smoke on top of the meshes, this is where you can start to use the light path. So the is shadow ray is what we can use to create a different shadow. So we're going to use the transparent BSDF, and we're going to use a contrast and brightness control to control the shadow contrast and brightness. And we're going to use a mix shader, and we're going to use the first shader in one of them and the second shader in the next one. And we're going to use the factor of is a shadow ray. So in this case, we could change the contrast. I think, sorry, let me just double check. change the brightness. There we go. So here I can make the shadows a bit larger like this. I'm also going to clamp it because this is a 0 to 1 concept. If I take a look together like this, as you can see, it's inversed. So we can just put 1 to 0, whoops, 0 to 1. And I'm going to also invert it. Right, so here we have, hey, it's not working. Sorry, not factor, color. There we go. So this is my new shadow, as you can see. There's the shadow right there. So now if I take a look, I can split up using the shadow ray, I think. I can have a soft smoke like this. Let's go full screen. But I can have a really big shadow here. I have a nice soft smoke, but I can pretend it's really dense and control the different shadows of the smoke onto the actual geometry. You can use a nice soft image with a really cool shadow, however you want to use it, to drive your mesh to that degree. So
And the same node setup would work in cycles, right?
I think so. Let me just double confirm. Switch to cycles. Go to GPU. And yes, it's the same setup. Obviously, it's going to be a lot longer to render, but you can, depending on what you need to do. So it's the same setup. So I'm using a nice smoky feel, which casts a really big and soft shadow. And obviously I can change it. I can make it less powerful or softer or high or super big, you know? So it gives me the ability to control how the light passes through the image to pretend it's real particles for very cheap.
Yes.
So Plebe says, it looks very photoreal, and it is a very balanced composition. I agree. The lights, shadows, and shapes makes it feel very well rounded. I highly agree as well. You've really improved there. You love the kind of concept of monochrome sepia color scheme as well. And Shagman also mentions that the poem talks a lot about a physical attraction in a romantic way, and the image captures that quite nicely. I also agree as well. So really good work, Shadesnoop. This is where we're going to finish it for today. I just wanted to say thanks for sharing this piece, putting it out there, having us take a look at it. I think it's a really nice piece. And it was a challenge, and with the short amount of time that you probably had, you've done an excellent job. It's very similar to what we do on Mondays with the Blender Royale, except we have one word. Here you had a whole page, 2 pages of words.
You know, I've never like participated in that because I don't know, I kind of get nervous under time pressure because sometimes I just really come to see what other people are doing, just to see. I think it's a lot of fun.
It is fun. Obviously 1 hour to make a piece is not a lot, and also a single word prompt is a very open artistic challenge.
Yes.
But it's worth doing. The people who usually communicate a stronger story usually win the votes. So it's a good practice to do. So thank you, everyone. So that's it for today. Lately, I have been, I'll give you a quick little update of the Painterly project. I'll be working very hard on creating hundreds of assets. Dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of assets for the Painterly project. Including things for the city, different parts of gardens, buildings, commercial centers, architecture, things for the airport and things like that. I've been using the automation system that I've showed you over the past 2 weeks to do this relatively quickly, but there still is a sheer amount of assets that takes time to prepare. But they're soon ready for the Painterly project. Later next week is when I start correcting some of the animations, and on the 29th of April, the music will be released as a full album, and hopefully on YouTube. The first video loops will be released, and then after that we're going to start releasing more story and content about the different areas of the city using the Painterly technique. So that's a quick little update. Shadesnoop says you can't wait. I'm glad. It's a big project, still a lot to do, but hopefully within the 12 songs that are coming out by DJ Unknown, we'll hopefully tell the story of the city with 9 different neighborhoods and everything that happens within it, and the music that goes with each neighborhood. So hopefully it's going to be a great listening experience and an interesting painted world to look at. So it's coming on. I've just been working so hard doing these assets, just hundreds of them, lots and lots of assets, so that I can do the layout and the animatic at the same time and very quickly. It just requires a lot of effort creating the library. Once the library is ready, then I can just work. So that's the little quick update. So thank you everyone. Thanks you, Shackman, Shadesnoop, Plebes, Omar, Cantorin, I'm Kinda Drunk especially, and Andy the Timid for today, for hanging out till the end. So I will see you next week. If you have any topics or extra art that you'd like to take a look at next week, feel free to drop it into the Q&A and critique chat. And also, if you like what we do here, making the time for this, a little bit of investigation, feel free to drop me a cup of coffee on Ko-Fi or Patreon. I would be super happy with that. If not, it's all good. I'll see you next week. Same time, same place.
Thank you, Dre's. Once again, thanks for the opportunity. And thanks everybody for the critics. It means a lot. Thank you.
Good work.
Thanks, Drews.
Good job, guys. Thanks, Trace.
All right, so have a good weekend. See you next week.